Media.
Comparison itself isn't inherently bad. It's how we use it. It's what we do with comparison that can go south.
Hi, my name is Ronnie Cruz. After almost 2 decades as a career network marketer, I realized that despite continual work on my personal and professional development, that I had hit a massive brick wall. So I took a deep and honest look at myself, top to bottom, hoping to find answers, and my search led me to one conclusion. The definitions I held of my business, of my world, of my life were the very things holding me back. If I wanted to change, if I wanted to grow beyond my current circumstances, I had to wipe the slate clean and redefine. This show is dedicated to helping you identify the belief systems, the mindsets, the very definitions that have held you back, and then help you break through those limitations to finally create the life you've been working so hard to achieve. Welcome to the Redefine Podcast.
All right, welcome back to the show. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're going to talk about comparison and whether or not it's actually as bad as everybody says it is. In the personal development world, in the self-development and motivational world, we hear it all the time. We hear people say that we shouldn't compare ourselves to others. And I get that, right? The comparison often puts us in a negative emotional and negative mental state. However, I think that's only a small piece of the puzzle, right? I think there's a larger conversation, a larger context around comparison. And I'll take it a step further and say that comparison is actually necessary if we're on a growth journey, right? So that's what we're going to get to today. Remember, this show is all about redefining, and I want to redefine the word comparison for you so that you can then use it more productively, and that comparison can then serve you, right? Now, I started thinking about this particular topic around comparison because in the last episode, we were talking about the gap, right? The gap between your vision and your ideal self and where you want to take your life and the goals that you have versus where you are now and who you are now, right? And really, the only way we become aware of that gap is if we're making the comparison between the two. I also thought about this as a result of recently scrolling through social media. Now, I don't do this often, right? Like I generally get on social and look at my feeds for research or if I'm creating and posting content. But occasionally I do get on there just to kind of shut my brain off and to mindlessly scroll, right? I'll spend maybe 15, 20 minutes scrolling and just allow myself that decompression. Recently, I found myself while I was scrolling, I found myself comparing myself to the content that I was seeing. I follow a lot of really interesting and compelling accounts, right? I follow a lot of hikers, let's say, for example, right? People that are campers. And I found myself thinking, like, how are these individuals always finding themselves at, the best hikes and with these best views and the best vistas ever? How are they doing this all the time? Or even like these luxury brands sometimes, these luxury lifestyle accounts that I follow. How are they always seem to be at like some exotic location or at some luxury resort with champagne in their hand, right? How are they staying at these fancy Airbnbs all the time? And I had to catch myself and remind myself that, okay, Ronnie, remember, this is just very, very curated content, right? And I even realized this with the podcasts I listen to, right? The Brendon Burchard podcast, Lori Harder, Jasmine Star, these individuals that I really look up to and that I consider my mentors, Alex Hormozi, right? Like I got to thinking, like, man, how is it that these individuals always seem to have it so together? How is Alex Hormozi so super productive and he's always on top of his game? How is it that Brendon Burchard is always delivering such high quality content? And then again, I have to remind myself, okay, these guys are humans too, and that this content, again, is very curated content. Especially in the coaching space and the business space, they want to put out the content that's going to be most productive in serving their community, serving the people that are listening. What I love about Brendon Burchard, one of the many things that I love about Brendon Burchard, that he constantly reminds his audience that, okay, I'm human too, right? Like I have my foibles, I have my flaws, I have my days when my patience isn't as good as it should be, right? When I'm impatient with people, or I have I'm not at my best in some of the interactions, right? He reminds people that, yeah, okay, I'm not perfect. I know I deliver these amazing talks, and that's what you guys see. But behind the scenes, I'm human too, and I'm just as flawed as the next guy. And that's what really I had to remind myself again, right? Not only is the content very curated and very narrow sliver peek into their life experiences, but there's also a human being behind all of this, and that human being is just as flawed, experiences as many struggles or even more struggles, experiences challenges and difficulties just like I do, right? And so to compare myself to what I'm seeing and the content that I'm seeing is really it's not fair to them obviously, and it's not fair to me, right? It's not fair to me. Now, it's not the comparison so much that's the issue, but it's the negative judgments I make of myself as a result of that comparison, right? It's that self-judgment. It's that feeling that I don't measure up to these ideals, right? I don't measure up to who I need to be in order to achieve the goals that I want to achieve. And that's not really fair, and that's not really productive. And it's not really 100% true, right? These are just negative judgments. Comparison is actually necessary because you need that contrast between where you want to go and where you are now in order to figure out what you need to do to get there, right? You need to compare the two, and if you want to figure out the steps that you need to take on a day-to-day to get yourself closer to that goal, right? So comparison is it can really serve you and can really be productive for you if you're looking at it objectively. And so that's what I suggest. So the two suggestions so far is, number one, realize that the content and the things that we're exposing ourselves to is very curated, and it's a very narrow sliver, a narrow peek into a larger life, right? A bigger life experience that we don't have access to. And also the comparison, if you're going to make comparison, if you find yourself in a comparative state, in a comparative mindset, look at it as objectively as you can, right? Especially when it comes to comparing yourself to where you want to go and who you want to become. Look at it objectively and dissect it in a way that you can put it into small bite-sized actionable steps on a day-to-day that will actually then get you closer towards that ideal, right? Towards that ideal. So those are two suggestions. The third suggestion is always remember that even though there is a gap between where you are now and where you want to be, there's still so many things in the here and now in your life right now. Even if you're experiencing difficulties, even if you're experiencing challenges and adversities, there are still so many things in the here and now, in your present and current circumstance, that you can be grateful for. And so creating a gratitude practice will really help you get recentered with that, because if you're in a comparative state and you're using you're unconsciously creating negative judgments with that comparative state, it takes your focus away from the here and now, right? It distracts you from the things that you can actually be grateful for and things that you already do currently love. Chances are there are many things in your life right now that you love. Again, even if you're experiencing challenges, even if you're experiencing adversity, there are still so many things that you can be grateful for. So creating a gratitude practice will actually help you really be in a space to be less harsh on yourself when you're making comparison. It'll actually allow you to be centered so that you can look at the comparison objectively, as opposed to looking at the comparison through a negative judgment, right? All right, so, if you don't already have a gratitude practice, wake up every day and start one, right? Start tomorrow. Wake up in the morning and think of 5 things that you're grateful for. And it could be anything, right? I'm grateful for the fact that I have the ability to share this content and this message with you. I'm grateful for my dogs, who are thankfully all asleep right now and aren't making a lot of noise as I record this. There's so many things that you can be grateful for. And already, as I say, just those 2 things, it puts me in such a great state that when I see the gap between where I am now and where I want to be, I can approach that gap in a healthy mental state, and I can look at things more objectively, and then attack it from the actionable steps that I need to take every day, right? So comparison itself isn't inherently bad. It's how we use it. It's what we do with comparison that can go south, right? Because oftentimes we use comparison to place negative judgments on ourselves and how we don't measure up, how we don't have what it takes, how we're not as good as X, Y, and Z. In reality, we also just as likely can look at comparison objectively in order to dissect and figure out what we need to do, the steps we need to take on a day-to-day to become better, right? And it's not that we're trying to be perfect human beings, because that's not possible. It's that we're trying to become better than we were yesterday, and you do that by creating a vision and comparing where you are now to that vision that you want to create, and then like I said, you're figuring out the steps to get there. So that's my message for comparison. It's not that bad. It's not that bad a thing. And again, you can really empower yourself if you look at comparison as a way to objectively identify the things that you need to do in order to create the vision and the life that you want. So that's it. If you have any questions about this, of course, leave it in the comments. If you're on the YouTube or if you're listening to this podcast, go ahead and go ahead and join our community online, our Facebook community. It's facebook.com/group/redefine community. We can have this discussion. Again, the community is still relatively small. So, I stay very engaged with that community. And so that's a great place to find support, to ask your questions, to start discussions on this topic and whatever topic that happens to be on your mind, right? So go to there. Again, it's facebook.com/group/redefine community. And of course, more to come from me in a couple of days. So until then, be well, be safe. We'll see you in the next episode.